Today I'm going to be wearing my hard hat because I'm doing some building, some team building. Yes, that's right, I'm going to be creating the blueprint for one team of 6 Pokemon for each of the types, laying the foundation for 18 new gym leaders. But like any good foreman, I need to stick to certain criteria to ensure success. So how will I be deciding on the Super 6 that make up each team? Well, it will come down to 4 factors. Number 1, Pokemon synonymous with the type. Sometimes you think of a type and a Pokemon will come to your head. If I said to you right now Dragon, I imagine most of you will think of Dragonite or Salamence. Alternatively, sometimes an archetype will come to mind. Take how closely associated the regional bird archetype is to the flying type. Number 2, team synergy. These aren't going to be just 6 iconic Pokemon slapped together. No, there needs to be some thought in how all of these Pokemon work in cohesion to overwhelm the opponent. Number 3, Pokemon variety. I'm not limiting myself to just 1 or a handful of generations worth of Pokemon. No, I've got the full 9 generation roster to work from and I intend to use it. I'm not going to put any numerical limitations, but just know I'm trying my best to diversify my picks. Number 4, keeping consistency. For every team I'll include 1 starter, 1 regional form, 1 gimmick and 1 terrain, weather or hazard setter. After those 4 have been considered, my own personal preference will come into play. I should also note that I'm not including legendaries, mythical or event Pokemon into the actual team. So put on your heavy duty boots and don't walk under any ladders because the construction is underway. For our first gym, I feel like I'm bugging out, as the Pokemon from this type find themselves creepy crawling their way to the bottom of every tier list. But I can't help but feel like this is a web of lies, and we need to be butter-free from the falsehood and believe in the bug type. Whilst Bug doesn't have any signature weather or terrain, it does have a signature move, Sticky Web, but we'll get to that later. Our lead for this brilliant bug team is the Ellie Spider Pokemon Galvantula. A quick look at Galvantula's stats will tell you that this Pokemon can hit hard and fast with its 97 and 108 stats in special attack and speed respectively. Unfortunately, its other stats are nothing to write home about. But that's okay, because Galvantula's main purpose is to set up the aforementioned Sticky Web to support the team. Its secondary purpose is to hit opponents hard with its dual stab of Bug Buzz and Thunderbolt, the latter being particularly useful against would-be flying type checks, leaving the final move slot open for some grass coverage in the form of Energy Ball. Galvantula has a couple of great abilities at its disposal, but we are opting for our Nerve. This is primarily to prevent recovery through held citrus berries or pinch berries, but we are also preventing Pokemon reducing our super effective damage. Speaking of held items, we are using a Focus Sash to live at least 1 hit to ensure Sticky Web goes up, and hopefully outspeed to respond with a powerful move. So here's the overview of the full set. Alternative options could be U-turn or Volt Switch for easier pivoting. I also playtested Compound Eyes Thunder, but I think Thunderbolt Unnerve is just a little bit better. What do you think of this lead though? Comment down below if you think it's a good choice or you think it's just too weak defensively. So as you probably already know, there are a lot of bug-type Pokemon to choose from, and therefore there is a few honourable mentions. So rather than clumping them all at the end, I'm going to disperse them throughout the video. The first of these honourable mentions is Volcarona. For those of you surprised that this Pokemon is not on the team, let me just mention that this is the Sun Pokemon. Let me say that again, the Sun Pokemon. Do you not think that thematically makes more sense for the Fire type? Maybe you disagree with me, but for me, Volcarona has to be on the Fire type team, not the Bug type team. Second, we have an iconic Bug and Steel type in the form of Fortress. Yes, I'm sure a lot of you would be thinking perhaps of the most infamous Bug and Steel type, but they're going on a different team. Instead, I'm blessing this team with some much needed bulk. Just look at that hulking 140 base defense, can make even the most threatening physical attackers redundant. Its moveset furthers this by sporting the bug type move Lunge. This move reduces the target's attack by 1 stage on contact. Fortress supports its team with not just bulk, but its utility through hazard removal via Rapid Spin. Stealth rocks are a massive issue for bugs, so having some way to clear them will help. For our next move, we are packing Iron Head. This is to help to stave off any pesky fairy types. For our last move, I went for Explosion. I think there are better options, but I think personally Fortress is synonymous with this move. Similarly to Galvantula, Fortress has access to a couple of great abilities in Sturdy and Overcoat. We are opting for the former, however. This is so that we can survive at least 1 hit from a fire type move or a special move. This will hopefully give us the opportunity to do Rapid Spin to get rid of any hazards, or Explode to open up an opportunity for the rest of our team. For our held item, I'm going for Leftovers. Keeping our wall alive is key throughout the battle, so a little bit of recovery will assist in that. I would say that there is less obvious alternatives than Galvantula's set, but there is some options like Earthquake or Ice Spinner or Stone Edge that could be utilised. Of course, another hazard could be set up, but that's for a different gym. A Resto Chesto set is another option for some recovery, but I still think leftovers is better. Now, while we can't have a starter on a team due to no such thing existing, we can have the one and only regional form for bug types, with Kleavor. Rather than having a monstrous defense, he instead has an outrageous 130 in attack. This is really when an unstoppable force meets an immovable object. Not to mention that 95 in defense isn't bad at all. Alright, let's get down to the moveset. X-Scissor is our signature bug type stab, accompanied by Rock Slide. It's assisted in pivoting with U-turn alongside some much needed fighting type coverage through close combat. Our damage output is further accentuated by our ability Sheer Force, which of course removes the secondary effects of certain moves but does increase our attacks by 30%. Lastly, our held item is Clear Amulet to avoid any stat debuffs through Intimidate switch-ins or moves like Charm. So here's the set in its entirety. Our team so far is based around bulk and strategy, but this Pokemon is purely here to tear through the opposition's teams through raw power. Alright, next up we have the move Lokix. Wait, we have the Pokemon Lokix. I think I can comfortably say that Lokix is one of, if not the coolest bug type ever. So with a base stat total of only 450, it feels like this Pokemon makes the most of that stats available by having a decent 102 in attack and a decent 92 in speed. The rest of its stats are whatever, but those don't matter anyway. Because Lokix's job is to hit hard and fast, and it is aided in that by having 2 priority moves in Sucker Punch and First Impression. Now I would say that Lokix probably has the most competitive set out the lot. That is because I watched a Freeze-Eye video about Lokix a couple of weeks ago, and I didn't realise I'd been subconsciously guided to the sweatiest member of the team. This is compounded within the last 2 moves being Trailblaze and U-turn, meaning this Pokemon is the perfect pivot to keep the opposition guessing, and with the Tinted Lens ability, which makes not very effective moves effective, no Pokemon is safe from the wrath of the Grasshopper Pokemon. Its damage is further boosted by a Life Orb, making this current UU Pokemon an absolute beast to come up against. So here's the full set for Lokix. I think out of all of the sets so far, I think you could critique this one the least. Maybe there's a better move than Trailblaze, but I just thought it'd be nice to boost its somewhat middling speed. Make sure to put your suggestions in the comments down below. Now, before we talk about the next team member, I thought I'd talk to you about another honourable mention being Shedinja. Shedinja was actually a Pokemon that made it onto the penultimate draft of this video. It's quite gimmicky, but I feel like the bug type in general is gimmicky by nature. In the end, I ended up dropping it for Lokix, as I think it's a better pick overall, but for those upset for it not being there, I completely understand. The next Pokemon is another beast, except this one doesn't hit particularly hard, but walls pretty hard. I'm of course talking about the water bubble Pokemon Araquanid. A stat of 92 in defense isn't bad, but what sets this Pokemon apart is its ability to shrug off special damage with a massive 132 in special defense. Sure, the 17 attack isn't all that impressive, but this Pokemon's job isn't to deal out damage, but to sponge it. However, we've gone for a pretty offensive moveset, with our first move being Leech Life. We have no way of recovering any HP, so this should aid in just that. Not only that, but 85 base power liquidation should help deal with any fire or rock type that this team may struggle against. Our second bug stab comes in the form of Infestation. This is to help get consistent damage off from Pokemon attempting to stall us. Finally, we have Poison Jab to assist in dealing with fairy types. Now, a quick look at the abilities will show that Araquanid has 2 great options. However, we're opting for Water Bubble. This means our damage output is further supported by our ability because it turns the 85 base power liquidation into a massive 170 before stab. Furthermore, this ability also reduces fire type damage by 50%, meaning we actually resist the type's biggest weakness, further boosting our ability to tank. Now, if you factor in our held Assault Vest, we become incredibly difficult to take down. So as we look at this set as a whole, I actually brainstormed an idea while I was working on the script. I wondered if any bug Pokemon could learn Wish to further support Araquanid, and it turns out one can, Illumise. I thought this horrible set that could be used to support it that includes Wish, Encore, Baton Pass / U-turn, and Helping Hand / Substitute, depending on whether it goes singles or doubles. But how do you think I did on the Araquanid set? So I'm going to talk about the next 2 honourable mentions in tandem. These Pokemon are Heracross and Pinsir. Now, as I release more of these videos, you may notice that some gyms will have overlapping types or lore. I thought this might be a cool way to implement some double battles once all 18 gyms are done. Now, the original idea was to have Pinsir on the bug team and the Heracross on the fighting team. However, I opted in the end for a different ace as I felt like I was missing out on a crucial archetype. But don't worry, Heracross fans, you'll see him in another video. Pinsir fans, unfortunately you're not so lucky. Alright, let's finally discuss our ace, Beedrill. Mega Beedrill. Now, the archetype I felt like we were missing was the early root bug type Pokemon. And this Poison Bee does not mess around with an enormous 150 in attack and a ridiculous 145 in speed. I've said a couple of times that certain Pokemon are here to hit hard and fast, but this Pokemon encapsulates this to a different level. A decent 80 in special defense mean that this Pokemon is not just a one-hit wonder as well, it does have some longevity against special attacking threats. Our first move is Fell Stinger, which of course is only a 50 base power move, but if it gets a knockout, it's basically game over for the opposition, as this team with a +3 attack stat is an absolute beast. To round out our stab, we have Poison Jab. For any steel types hoping to slow us down, we are sporting Brit Break for coverage, and finally we have Roost for a little bit of recovery to really punish an opponent attempted to stall us. Our item is obviously Beedrill, and our ability becomes Adaptability, meaning we are steamrolling through any team weak to our stab moves. Alright, let's have a look at the Beedrill set in its entirety. How do you think I've done? Honestly, I'm pretty okay with this set. Is it as good as the Lokix set? No, but is it one of the best in this team? I think so. Maybe instead of Roost, I could have used something like Drill Run to get the ground type coverage this team could desperately use. Other than that, I'm pretty okay with it. So let's look at the team in its entirety. What do you think? Have I encapsulated the bug type well enough? Is there some obvious Pokemon that I've missed? Is any of the honourable mentions a shoo-in for this team, and I should definitely replace one of them? Leave all your thoughts in the comments below.